In this video, I want to cover the use of a vision application. It's commonly called AVI, basically automatic visual inspection, right? Where I'm going to inspect basically a vial here. I'm going to inspect the stopper on top. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to briefly cover how exactly an image is acquired basically by a kind of an application, and essentially then how it's sent over to a SQL database. So I've written applications in C# for a very, very long time now, and this is an example of one of them. Essentially, when I'm using Cognex, what I'm doing is I'm using these Cognex libraries, and essentially it's something that I've become very familiar with effectively over time. So essentially here I'm going to have an image that's acquired, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to send the data off to basically a SQL database, and I just want to kind of cover the basics that are there. So in the actual in the application, what I'm looking at is the diameter. So I'm looking at the diameter of the stopper on top, and then what I'm doing is I'm looking at how circular it is. Right. And then what I'm doing is I'm looking at a general kind of pattern match. Right. So essentially, I'm just kind of looking at three basic kind of metrics. And if you can think maybe, basically this vial had been filled, and then immediately after we have the stoppers themselves who are being looked at. And just before you're going to basically put your cap on. So that's an example of a cap. So before we put the cap on, we're just going to take a look at the quality of the stopper. And if the stopper is bad, then basically what we're going to do is we're just effectively going to effectively reject it, right? Okay, so just to kind of kick off the example, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this stopper here that has a defect on it. I'm going to swap out basically the good one on a test rig that I have here beside me. So I'm going to trigger the camera, and essentially we'll see the bad guy that's come in. And effectively what we'll see here is that the bad guy has had problems with it, as you would expect. It did its best to look for the diameter. It found that there was a circular issue. The camera did its best to try and take a look at that, and effectively it failed there also. So what I'll do then is I'm going to swap out for the good one. So we've got the bad one, we've got the good one. So I'm going to put the good one back in again, just as an example, as he's kind of flying through. And we'll trigger the camera, and basically then the camera has seen that he's good again, right? And then we look at kind of a SQL database, and we'll just kind of execute a query here, and what we'll see is with an initial pass, then we had a fail, and then we gone back to a pass, right? And essentially what we can see then is that we've got highly similar scores, between the good ones, and then the bad one obviously has its issues that are here. So essentially in real time, that's the benefit of having a vision system there. You can have this full kind of high-speed production as such, and the cameras are acquiring all the time, and essentially then you can set up this SQL database for an analyst to come along essentially at a further time, to effectively take a look. And as well, you've got kind of real-time analysis, basically saying whether a product is good or not. So therefore it can be ejected by a machine for scrap, momentarily later, or whichever else. So look, I might do videos then going into more detail on the C# side and on the SQL side, but it was just to kind of cover the whole idea of data acquisition and then inserting, into a SQL database in real time. Thank you very much.